Hello and welcome. Alright, we're gonna do a little bit of a dramatic reading tonight. I will apologize to any actual native King's English speakers whose native accent I will undoubtedly mangle. Alright, first of all, let's post the file to which I shall be reading from. And yes, the lights are off for two reasons. Number one, a little bit of a spookier atmosphere, a little bit of spookiness. And also because I've had the key light on for most of the day, assisting with the space showcase under the direction of Mr. Rob Goslin and Pilar Barrara. I'm actually reminded that I need to drop a comment about that in Slack. Alright, a dramatic reading of the legend. Twitch.tv/Streetsfire. Alright. Type the thing. Now, a couple of things. Number one is, unfortunately, due to recent changes at Twitter, my auto post didn't go up like it always used to do, which makes me sad. Elda is doing the thing for 50 months. Hello. Welcome. I haven't started yet. I need a little fortification in the form of caffeine. So I did post a link in chat of the copy of the book that I will be reading from. And I'll start at the very end. This is the Project Gutenberg ebook of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. They say at the top of the file, this ebook is for the use of anyone, anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away, or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you'll have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. So this is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The author is Washington Irving. The release date of this particular ebook was the 41st ebook they released on June 27th, 2008. Most recently updated June 27th of 2022. And it's in the language of English because it's the only one that I personally know. So, shall we begin? Are you seated comfortably? To quote my dear acquaintance and colleague at Signum University, Dr. Sarah Brown, who is fucking amazing. And I can't actually say that in the Signum communities. We don't generally swear, but she is awesome. Anyhow. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Found among the papers of the late Diedrich Knickerbocker. A pleasing land of drowsy-headed walls, of dreams that weave before the half-shut eye, and of gay castles in the clouds that pass, forever flushing round a summer sky. Castle of Indolence. In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, and at that broad expansion of the river, dominated by the ancient Dutch navigators, the Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas when they crossed, there lies a small market town or rural port, which by some is called Greensboro, but is more generally and properly known by the name of Tarrytown. This name was given, we are told, in the former days, by the good housewives of the adjacent country, from the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern on market days. Be that as it may, I do not vouch for the fact, but merely advert to it, for the sake of being precise and authentic. Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there's a little valley, or rather lap of land among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook glides through it, with just murmur enough to lull one to repose, and the occasional whistle of a quail or tapping of a woodpecker is almost the only sound that ever breaks in upon the uniform tranquillity. I recollect that, when a stripling, My first exploit in squirrel shooting was in a grove of tall walnut trees that shades one side of the valley. I had wandered into it at noontime, when all nature is peculiarly quiet, and was startled by the roar of my own gun, as it broke the Sabbath stillness around and was prolonged and reverberated by the angry echoes. If ever I should wish for a retreat whither I might steal from the world and its distractions, and dream quietly away from the remnant of a troubled life, I know of none more promising than this little valley. From the listless repose of the place, and the peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers, this sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow, and its rustic lads are called the Sleepy Hollow Boys throughout all the neighboring country. A drowsy, dreamy influence seems to hang over the land and to pervade the very atmosphere. Some say that the place was bewitched by a high German doctor during the early days of the settlement. Others that an old Indian chief, the prophet or wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there before the country was discovered by Master Hendrik Hudson. Certain it is, the place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of the good people, causing them to walk in a continual reverie. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently see strange sights, and hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across the valley than in any other part of the country, and the nightmare, with her ninefold, seems to make it a favorite scene of her gambols. The dominant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region, and seems to be the commander-in-chief of all the powers of the air, is the apparition of a figure on horseback, without a head. It is said by some to be the ghost of a Hessian trooper, whose head had been carried away by a cannonball, and in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who was ever and anon seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night, as if on the wings of the wind. His haunts are not confined to the valley, but extend at times to the adjacent roads, and especially to the vicinity of a church at no great distance. Indeed, certain of the most authentic historians of these parks, who have been careful in collecting and collating the floating facts concerning this spectre, allege that the body of the trooper having been buried in the churchyard, the ghost rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow, like a midnight blast, is owing to his being belated, and in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. Such is the general purport of this legendary superstition, which has furnished materials for many a wild story in that region of shadows, and the spectre is known at all country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. It is remarkable that the visionary propensity which I have mentioned is not confined to the native inhabitants of the valley, but is unconsciously imbibed by everyone who resides there for a time. However wide awake they may have been before they entered that sleepy region, they are sure, in no little time, to inhale the witching influence of the air, and to begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams, and to see apparitions. I mention this peaceful spot with all possible laud, for it is in such little retired Dutch valleys, found here and there embosomed in the great state of New York, that population, manners, and customs remain fixed, while the great torrent of migration and improvement, which is making such incessant changes in other parts of this restless country, sweeps by them unobserved. They are like those little nooks of still water which border a rapid stream, where we may see the straw and bubble riding quietly at anchor, or slowly revolving in their mimic harbor, undisturbed by the rush of the passing current. Though many years have elapsed since I trod the drowsy shades of Sleepy Hollow, yet I question whether I should not still find the same trees and the same families vegetating in its sheltered bosom. In this by-place of nature there abode, in a remote period of American history, that is to say, some 30 years since, a worthy wight by the name of Ichabod Crane, who sojourned, or, as he expressed it, tarried, in Sleepy Hollow, for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was a native of Connecticut, a state which supplies the Union with pioneers for the mind as well as for the forest, and sends forth yearly its legions of frontier woodmen and country schoolmasters. The cognomen of Crane was not inapplicable to his person. He was tall, but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, and feet that might have served for shovels, and his whole frame most loosely hung together. His head was small and flat at the top, with huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long snipe nose, so it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck to tell which way the wind blew. To see him striding along the profile of a hill on a windy day, with his clothes bagging and fluttering about him, one might have mistaken him for the genius of famine descended upon the earth, or some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield. His schoolhouse was a low building of one large room, rudely constructed of logs, the windows partly glazed and partly patched with leaves of old copybooks. It was most ingeniously secured of vacant hours by a withe twisted in the handle of the door, and stakes set against the window shutters, so that a thief might get in with perfect ease. He would find some embarrassment in getting out. An idea most probably borrowed by the architect Jost van Houten from the mystery of an eel pot. The schoolhouse stood in a rather lonely but pleasant situation, just at the foot of a woody hill, with a brook running close by, and a formidable birch tree growing at one end of it. From hence the low murmur of his pupils' voices, conning over their lessons, might be heard in a drowsy summer's day, like the hum of a beehive, interrupted now and then by the authoritative voice of the master, and a tone of menace or command, or, peradventure, by the appalling sound of the birch as he urged some tardy loiterer along the flowery path of knowledge. Truth to say, he was a conscientious man, ever bore in mind the golden maxim, spare the rod and spoil the child. Ichabod Crane's scholars were certainly not spoiled. I would not have it imagined, however, that he was one of those cruel potentates of the school who joy in the smart of their subjects. On the contrary, he administered justice with discrimination rather than severity, taking the burden off the backs of the weak and laying it on those of the strong. Your mere puny stripling, that winced at the least flourish of the rod, was passed by with indulgence. But the claims of justice were satisfied by inflicting a double portion on some little tough, wrong-headed, broad-skirted Dutch urchin, who sulked and swelled and grew dogged and sullen beneath the birch. All this he called doing his duty by their parents, and he never inflicted a chastisement without following it up by the assurance, so consolatory to the smarting urchin, that he would remember it and thank him for it to the longest day he had to live. When school hours were over, he was even the companion and playmate of the larger boys, and on holiday afternoons he would convoy some of the smaller ones home, who happened to have pretty sisters or good housewives for mothers, noted for the comforts of the cupboard. Indeed, it behooved him to keep on good terms with his pupils. The revenue arising from his school was small, and would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and though lank, had the dilating powers of an anaconda. But to help out his maintenance, he was, according to the country custom in those parts, boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers whose children he instructed. With these he lived successfully a week at a time, thus going the rounds of the neighborhood with all his worldly effects tied up in a cotton handkerchief. That all this might not be too onerous for the purses of his rustic patrons, who are apt to consider the cost of schooling a grievous burden, and schoolmasters as mere drones, He had various ways of rendering himself both useful and agreeable. He assisted the farmers occasionally with the lighter labors of their farms, helped to make hay, mended the fences, took the horses to water, drove the cows from pasture, and cut wood for the winter fire. He laid aside, too, all the dominant dignity and absolute sway with which he lorded it in his little empire, the school, and became wonderfully gentle and ingratiating. He found favor in the eyes of the mothers by petting the children, particularly the youngest, and like the lion bold, which Wilhelm so magnanimously the lamb did hold, he would sit with the child on one knee, and rock a cradle with his foot for whole hours together. In addition to his other vocations, he was the singing master of the neighborhood, and picked up many bright shillings by instructing the young folks in psalmody. It was a matter of no little vanity to him on Sundays to take his station in front of the church gallery with a band of chosen singers, where, in his own mind, he completely carried away the palm of the parson. Certain it is, his voice resounded far above all the rest of the congregation, and there are peculiar quavers still to be heard in that church, which may even be heard a half-mile off, quite to the opposite end of the mill pond on a still Sunday mornings, which are said to be legitimately descended from the nose of Ichabod Crane. Thus, by divers little makeshifts in the ingenious way which is commonly denominated by hook and by crook, the worthy pedagogue got on tolerably enough, and was thought, by all who understood nothing of the labor of head work, to have a wonderfully easy life of it. The schoolmaster is generally a man of some importance in the female circle of a rural neighborhood, being considered a kind of idle, gentleman-like personage, of vastly superior taste and accomplishments to the rough country swains, and indeed inferior in learning only to the parson. His appearance, therefore, is apt to occasion some little stir at the tea-table of a farmhouse, and the addition of a supernumerary dish of cakes or sweetmeats, or, peradventure, the parade of a silver teapot. Our man of letters, therefore, was peculiarly happy in the smiles of all the country damsels. How he would figure among them in the churchyard between service on Sundays, gathering grapes for them from the wild vines that overran the surrounding trees, reciting for their amusement all the epitaphs on the tombstones, or sauntering with a whole bevy of them along the banks of the adjacent mill pond, while the more bashful country bumpkins hung sheepishly back, envying his superior elegance and address. From his half-itinerant life, also, he was a kind of traveling gazette, or one carrying the whole budget of local gossip from house to house, so that his appearance was always greeted with satisfaction. He was, moreover, esteemed by the women as a man of great erudition, for he had read several books quite through, and was a perfect master of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft, which, by the way, he most firmly and potently believed. He was, in fact, an odd mixture of small shrewdness and simple credulity. His appetite for the marvelous and his powers of digesting it were equally extraordinary, and both had been increased by his residence in this spellbound region. No tale was too gross or too monstrous for his capacious swallow. It was often his delight, after his school was dismissed in the afternoon, to stretch himself on the rich bed of clover bordering the little brook that whimpered by his schoolhouse, and there con over old Mather's direful tales, until the gathering dusk of evening made the printed page a mere mist before his eyes. Then, as he wended his way back by swamp and stream and awful woodland, to the farmhouse where he happened to be quartered, every sound of nature, at that witching hour, fluttered his excited imagination. The moan of the whippoorwill from the hillside, the boding cry of the tree-toad, the harbinger of storm, the dreary hooting of the screech-owl, with a sudden rustling in a thicket of birds frightened from their roost. The fireflies, too, which sparkled most vividly in the darkest places, now and then startled him, as one of uncommon brightness would stream across his path. And if, by chance, a huge blockhead of a beetle came winging his blundering flight against him, the poor valet was ready to give up the ghost, with the idea that he was struck with a witch's token. His only resource on such occasions, either to drown thought or to drive away evil spirits, was to sing psalm tunes, and the good people of Sleepy Hollow, as they sat by their doors of an evening, were often filled with awe at hearing his nasal melody, and Lincoln's sweetness, long drawn out, floating from the distant hill or along the dusky road. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives, as they sat spinning by the fire, with a row of apples roasting and spluttering along the hearth, and to listen to their marvelous tales of ghosts and goblins, and haunted fields, and haunted brooks, and haunted bridges, and haunted houses, and particularly of the Headless Horseman, or Galloping Hessian of the Hollow, as they sometimes called him. He would delight them equally by his anecdotes of witchcraft, and of the direful omens and portentous sights and sounds in the air, which prevailed in earlier times in Connecticut, and would frighten them woefully with speculations upon comets and shooting stars, with the alarming fact that the world did indeed absolutely turn round, and that they were half the time topsy-turvy. But if there was a pleasure in all this, while snugly cuddling in the chimney corner of a chamber that was all of a ruddy glow from the crackling wood fire, and where, of course, no spectre dared show its face, it was dearly purchased by the terrors of a subsequent walk homewards. What fearful shapes and shadows beset his path, amidst the dim and ghastly glare of a snowy night! With what wistful look did he eye every trembling ray of light streaming across the waste fields from some distant window! How often was he appalled by some shrub covered in snow, which, like a sheeted spectre, beset his very path! How often did he shrink with curdling awe at the sound of his own steps on the frosty crust beneath his feet, and dread to look over his shoulder, lest he should behold some uncouth being tramping close behind him. And how often was he thrown into complete dismay by some rushing blast howling among the trees, and the idea that it was the Galloping Hessian on one of his nightly scourings. All these, however, were mere tremors of the night, phantoms of the mind that walk in darkness. And though he had seen many spectres in his time, and had been more than once beset by Satan in divers shapes, in his lonely perambulations, yet daylight put an end to all these evils, and he would have passed a pleasant life of it, in spite of the devil and all his works, if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity to mortal man than ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together, and that was a woman. Among the musical disciples who assembled one evening in each week to receive his instructions in psalmody was Katrina van Tassel, the daughter and only child of a substantial Dutch farmer. She was a blooming lass of fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches, and universally famed, not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations. She was withal a little of a coquette, as might be perceived even in her dress, which was a mixture of ancient and modern fashions, yet as most suited to set off her charms. She wore ornaments of pure yellow gold, which her great-great-grandmother had brought over from Sardom, that tempting stomacher of the olden time, and withal a provokingly short petticoat, to display the prettiest foot and ankle in the country round. Ichabod Crane had a soft and foolish heart toward the sex, and it was not to be wondered at so tempting a morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especially after he had visited her in her paternal mansion. Old Baltus Van Tassel was a perfect picture of a thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer. He seldom, it is true, sent either his eyes or his thoughts beyond the boundaries of his own farm, but within those everything was snug, happy, and well-conditioned. He was satisfied with his wealth, but not proud of it, and piqued himself upon the hearty abundance rather than the style in which he lived. His stronghold was situated on the banks of the Hudson, in one of those green, sheltered, fertile nooks in which the Dutch farmers are so fond of nestling. A great elm tree spread its broad branches over it, at the foot of which bubbled up a spring of the softest and sweetest water, in a little well formed of a barrel, and then stole sparkling away through the grass to a neighbouring brook that babbled along among alders and dwarf willows. Hard by the farmhouse was a vast barn that might have served for a church, every window and crevice of which seemed bursting forth with the treasures of the farm. The flail was busily resounding within it from morning to night. Swallows and martins skimmed twittering about the eaves, and rows of pigeons, some with one eye turned up as if watching the weather, some with their heads under their wings, or buried in their bosoms, others swelling and cooing and bowing about their dames, were enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Sleek, unwieldy polkas were grunting in the repose and abundance of their pens, from whence sallied forth, and now and again, troops of sucking pigs, as if to snuff the air. A stately squadron of snowy geese were riding in an adjoining pond, convoying whole fleets of ducks. Regiments of turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard, and guinea fowls fretting about it like ill-tempered housewives, with their peevish, discontented cry. Before the barn door strutted the gallant cock, the pattern of a husband, a warrior, and a fine gentleman, clapping his burnished wings and crowing in the pride and gladness of his heart, sometimes tearing up the earth with his feet, and then generously calling his ever-hungry family of wives and children to enjoy the rich morsel which he had discovered. The pedagogue's mouth watered as he looked upon the sumptuous promise of luxurious winter fare. In his devouring mind's eye, he pictured to himself every roasting pig running about with a pudding in his belly and an apple in his mouth. The pigeons were snugly put to bed in a comfortable pie, and tucked in with a coverlet of crust. The geese were swimming in their own gravy, and ducks pairing cosily in dishes like snug married couples with a decent competency of onion sauce. In the polkas he saw carved out the future sleek side of bacon and juicy relishing ham. Not a turkey, but he beheld daintily trussed up with its gizzard under its wing, and peradventure a necklace of savory sausages, and even bright Chanticleer himself lay sprawling on his back in a side dish, with uplifted claws as if craving that quarter which his chivalrous spirit disdained to ask while living. As the enraptured Ichabod fancied all of this, as he rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands, the rich fields of wheat, of rye, of buckwheat, and Indian corn, and the orchards burdened with ruddy fruit, which surrounded the warm tenement of Van Tassel, his heart yearned after the damsel who was to inherit these domains, and his imagination expanded with the idea how they might be readily turned into cash, and the money invested in immense tracts of wild land and shingle palaces in the wilderness. Nay, his busy fancy already realized his hopes, and presented to him the blooming Katrina, with the whole family of children mounted on top of a wagon, loaded with household trumpery, with pots and kettles dangling beneath, and he beheld himself bestriding a pacing mare with a colt at her heels, setting out for Kentucky, Tennessee, or the Lord knows where. When he entered the house, the conquest of his heart was complete. It was one of those spacious farmhouses with high-ridged but lowly sloping roofs, built in the style handed down from the first Dutch settlers. the low projecting eaves forming a piazza along the front, capable of being closed up in bad weather. Under this were the hung flails, harness, various utensils of husbandry, and nets for fishing in the neighboring river. Benches were built along the sides for summer use, and a great spinning wheel at one end, and a churn at the other, showed the various uses to which this important porch might be devoted. From this piazza, the wondering Ichabod entered the hall, which formed the center of the mansion and the place of usual residence. Here rows of resplendent pewter, ranged on a long dresser, dazzled his eyes. In one corner stood a huge bag of wool, ready to be spun. In another, a quantity of linsey-woolsey from the loom. Ears of Indian corn and strings of dried apples and peaches hung in gay festoons along the walls, mingled with a gourd of red peppers, and a door left ajar gave him a peep into the best parlor, where the claw-footed chairs and dark mahogany tables shone like mirrors, and irons and their accompanying shovel and tongs glistened from their covert of asparagus tops. Mock oranges and conch shells decorated the mantelpiece. Strings of various colored birds' eggs were suspended above it. A great ostrich egg was hung from the center of the room, and a center cupboard, knowingly left open, displayed immense treasure of old silver and well-mended china. From the moment Ichabod laid his eyes upon these regions of delight, the peace of his mind was at an end, and his only study was how to gain the affections of the peerless daughter of Van Tassel. In this enterprise, however, he had more real difficulties than generally fell to the lot of the knight-errant of yore, who seldom had anything but giants, enchanters, fiery dragons, and the like, easily conquered adversaries to contend with, and had to make his way merely through gates of iron and brass, and the walls of adamant to the castle keep, where the lady of his heart was confined. All which he achieved as easily as a man would carve his way to the center of a Christmas pie, and then the lady gave him her hand as a matter of course. Ichabod, on the contrary, had to win his way to the heart of a country coquette, beset with a labyrinth of whims and caprices, which were forever presenting new difficulties and impediments, and he had to encounter a host of fearful adversaries of real flesh and blood, the numerous rustic admirers, who beset every portal to her heart, keeping a watchful and angry eye upon each other, but ready to fly out in the common cause against any new competitor. Among these, the most formidable was a burly, roaring, roistering blade of the name of Abraham, or according to the Dutch abbreviation, Brom van Brunt, hero of the country round, which rang with his feats of strength and hardihood. He was broad-shouldered and double-jointed, with short, curly black hair, and a bluff, but not unpleasant countenance, having a mingled air of fun and arrogance. From his Herculean frame and great powers of limb, he had received the nickname of Brom Bones, by which he was universally known. He was famed for great knowledge and skill in horsemanship, being as dexterous on horseback as a Tartar. He was foremost at all races and cockfights, and with the ascendancy which bodily strength always acquires in rustic life, was the umpire in all disputes, setting his hat on one side and giving his decisions with an air and tone that admitted no gainsay or appeal. He was always ready for either a fight or a frolic, but he had more mischief than ill will in his composition, and with all this overbearing roughness, there was a strong dash of waggish good humor at the bottom. He had 3 or 4 boon companions who regarded him as their model, and at the head of whom he scoured the country, attending every scene of feud or merriment for miles around. In cold weather he was distinguished by a fur cap, surmounted by a flaunting fox's tail, and when the folks at a country gathering descried this well-known crest at a distance, whisking about among a squad of hard riders, they always stood by for a squall. Sometimes his crew would be heard dashing along past the farmhouses at midnight, with whoop and halloo, like a troop of Don Cossacks, and the old dames, startled out of their sleep, would listen for a moment till the hurry-scurry had clattered by, then exclaim, "Hi, there goes Brom Bones and his gang." The neighbors looked upon him with a mixture of awe, admiration, and goodwill, and when any madcap prank or rustic brawl occurred in the vicinity, always shook their heads and warranted Brom Bones was at the bottom of it. This rantipole hero had for some time singled out the blooming Katrina for the object of his uncouth gallantries, and though his amorous toyings were something of the gentle caresses and endearments of a bear, yet it was whispered that she did not altogether discourage his hopes. Certain it is, his advances were signals for rival candidates to retire, who felt no inclination to cross a line in his amours, insomuch that when his horse was seen tied to Van Tassel's paling on a Sunday night, a sure sign that his master was courting, or as it is termed, sparking within, all other suitors passed by in despair and carried the war into other quarters. Such was the formidable rival with whom Ichabod Crane had to contend, and considering all things, a stouter man than he would have shrunk from the competition, and a wiser man would have despaired. He had, however, a happy mixture of pliability and perseverance in his nature. He was in form and spirit like a supplejack, yielding but tough, and though he bent, he never broke, and though he bowed beneath the slightest pressure, yet the moment it was away, jerk! He was as erect, and carried his head as high as ever. To have taken the field openly against his rival would have been madness, for he was not a man to be thwarted in his amours, any more than that stormy lover Achilles. Ichabod, therefore, made his advances in a quiet and gently insinuating manner. Under cover of his character of singing master, he made frequent visits at the farmhouse. Not that he had anything to apprehend from the meddlesome interference of parents, which is so often a stumbling block in the path of lovers. But Van Tassel was an easy, indulgent soul. He loved his daughter even better even than his pipe, and like a reasonable man and an excellent father, let her have her way in everything. His notable little wife, too, had enough to do to attend her housekeeping and manage her poultry, for, as she sagely observed, ducks and geese are foolish things and must be looked after, but girls can take care of themselves. Hell yeah. Thus, while the busy dame bustled about the house, or plied her spinning wheel at one end of the piazza, honest Bolt would sit smoking his evening pipe at the other, watching the achievements of a little wooden warrior, who, armed with a sword in each hand, was most valiantly fighting the wind in the pinnacle of the barn. In the meantime, Ichabod would carry on his suit, with the daughter by the side of the spring under the great elm, or sauntering along in the twilight, that hour so favorable to the lover's eloquence. I profess not to know how women's hearts are wooed and won. To me they have always been matters of riddle and admiration. Some seem to have but one vulnerable point, or door of access, while others have 1,000 avenues, and may be captured in 1,000 different ways. It is a great triumph of skill to gain the former, but a still greater proof of generalship to maintain possession of the latter, for man must battle with his fortress at every door and window. He who wins 1,000 common hearts is therefore entitled to some renown, but he who keeps undisputed sway over the heart of a coquette is indeed a hero. Certain it is, this was not the case with the redoubtable Brom Bones, and from the moment Ichabod Crane made his advances, the interest of the former evidently declined. His horse was never seen tied to the palings on Sunday nights, and a deadly feud gradually arose between him and the preceptor of Sleepy Hollow. Brom, who had a degree of rough chivalry about his nature, would fain have carried matters to open warfare and have settled their pretensions to the lady, according to the mode of those most concise and simple reasoners, the knights errant of yore, by single combat. But Ichabod was too conscious of the superior might of his adversary to enter the lists against him. He had overheard a boast of Bones, saying that he would double the schoolmaster up and lay him on a shelf in his own schoolhouse, and he was too wary to give him an opportunity. There was something extremely provoking in his obstinately pacific system. It left Brom no alternative but to draw upon the funds of the rustic waggery in his disposition, and to play off boorish practical jokes upon his rival. Ichabod became the object of whimsical persecution to Bones and his gang of rough riders. They harried his hitherto peaceful domains, smoked out his singing school by stopping up the chimney, broke into the schoolhouse at night in spite of its formidable fastenings of withe and window stakes, and turned everything topsy-turvy, so that the poor schoolmaster began to think all the witches in the country held their meetings there. But what was more annoying, Brom took all opportunities of turning him into ridicule in the presence of his mistress, and had a scoundrel dog whom he had taught to whine in the most ludicrous manner, and introduced as a rival of Ichabod's to instruct her in psalmody. In this way, matters went on for some time, without producing any material effect in the relative situations of the contending powers. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in pensive mood, sat enthroned on the lofty stool from whence he usually watched all the concerns of his little literary realm. In his hand he swayed a ferule, that sceptre of despotic power. The birch of justice reposed on 3 nails behind the throne, a constant terror to evildoers, while on the desk before him might be seen sundry contraband articles and prohibited weapons detected upon the persons of idle urchins, such as half-munched apples, pop-guns, whirligigs, flying cages, and whole legions of rampant little paper gamecocks. Apparently there had been some appalling act of justice recently inflicted, for his scholars were all busily intent upon their books, or slyly whispering behind them with one eye kept upon the master, and a kind of buzzing stillness reigned throughout the schoolroom. It was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a black man in tailcloth jacket and trousers, with round crowned fragment of a hat, like the cap of Mercury, and mounted on the back of a ragged, wild, half-broken colt, which he managed with a rope by way of halter. He came clattering up to the school door with an invitation to Ichabod to attend a merrymaking or quilting frolic, to be held that evening at Mynheer Van Tassel's. And having delivered his message with that air of importance and effort at fine language which a black person is apt to display on petty embassies of the kind, he dashed over the brook and was seen scampering away up the hollow, full of the importance and hurry of his mission. All was now bustle and hubbub in the late quiet schoolroom. The scholars were hurried through their lessons without stopping at trifles. Those who were nimble skipped over half with impunity, and those who were tardy had a smart application now and then in the rear to quicken their speed or help them over a tall word. Books were flung aside without being put away on the shelves. Inkstands were overturned, benches thrown down, and the whole school was turned loose an hour before usual time, bursting forth like a legion of young imps, yelping and racketing about the green and joy of their early emancipation. The gallant Ichabod now spent at least an extra half-hour at his toilet, brushing and furbishing up his best, and indeed only suit of rusty black, and arranging his locks by a bit of broken looking-glass that hung up in the schoolhouse. That he might make his appearance before his mistress in the true style of a cavalier, he borrowed a horse from the farmer with whom he was domiciliated, a choleric old Dutchman of the name of Hans van Ripper, and thus, gallantly mounted, issued forth like a knight-errant in quest of adventures. But it is meet I should, in the true spirit of romantic story, give some account of the looks and equipments of my hero and his steed. The animal he bestrode was a broken-down plow horse that had been outlived almost everything but its viciousness. He was gaunt and shagged, with a ewe neck and head like a hammer. His rusty mane and tail were tangled and knotted with burrs. One eye had lost its pupil and was glaring and spectral. The other had the gleam of the genuine devil in it. Still, he must have had fire and metal in his day, if we may judge from the name he bore of gunpowder. He had, in fact, been a favorite steed of his master's, the choleric Van Ripper, who was a furious rider, and had infused, very probably, some of his own spirit into the animal, for, old and broken down as he looked, there was more of a lurking devil in him than in any young filly in the country. Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. He rode with short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to the pommel of the saddle. His sharp elbows stuck out like a grasshopper's. He carried his whip perpendicularly in his hand, like a scepter, and as his horse jogged on, the motions of his arms was not unlike the flapping of a pair of wings. A small wool hat rested upon the top of his nose, for his scanty strip of forehead might be called, and the skirts of his black coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Such was the appearance of Ichabod and his steed as they shambled out of the gate of Hans Van Ripper. It was altogether an apparition. It is seldom to be met in broad daylight. It was, as I have said, a fine autumnal day. The sky was clear and serene, and nature wore that rich and golden livery which we must always associate with the idea of abundance. The forests had put on their sober brown and yellow, and while some trees of the tenderer kind had been nipped by the frost into brilliant dyes of orange and purple and scarlet, streaming files of wild ducks began to make their appearance high in the air. The bark of the squirrel might be heard from the groves of beech and hickory nuts, and the pensive whistle at the quail at intervals from the neighboring stubble fields. The small birds were taking their farewell banquets. In the fullness of their revelry they fluttered, chirping and frolicking from bush to bush and tree to tree, capricious from the very profusion and variety around them. There was the honest cock-robin, the favorite game of the stripling sportsman, with its loud, querulous note, and the twittering blackbirds flying in sable clouds, and the golden-winged woodpecker with his crimson crest, his broad black gorget and splendid plumage, and the cedar bird with its red-tipped wings and yellow-tipped tails, and the little Montero cap of feathers, and the blue jay, that noisy coxcomb in his gay light blue coat and white underclothes, screaming and shattering and nodding and bobbing and bowing, and pretending to be on good terms with every songster in the grove. As Ichabod jogged slowly on his way, his eye, ever open to every symptom of culinary abundance, ranged with delight over the treasures of jolly autumn. On all sides he beheld vast store of apples, some hanging in oppressive opulence on the trees, some gathered into baskets and barrels for the market, others heaped up in rich piles for the cider press. Farther on he beheld great fields of Indian corn, with its golden ears peeping from their leafy coverts, and holding out the promise of cakes and hasty pudding, and the yellow pumpkins lying beneath them, turning up their fair round bellies to the sun, and giving ample prospects of the most luxurious of pies. And anon he passed the fragrant buckwheat fields beneath the odor of the beehive, and as he beheld them, soft anticipation stole over his mind of dainty slapjacks, well buttered, and garnished with honey or treacle by the delicate little dimpled hand of Katrina Van Tassel, thus feeding his mind with many sweet thoughts and sugared suppositions. He journeyed along the sides of a range of hills which look out upon some of the goodliest scenes of the mighty Hudson. The sun gradually wheeled his broad disk down in the west. The wide bosom of the Tappan Zee lay motionless and glassy, excepting that here and there a gentle undulation waved and prolonged the blue shadow of the distant mountain. A few amber clouds floated in the sky without a breath of air to move them. The horizon was of a fine golden tint, changing gradually into a pure apple green, and from that into the deep blue of the mid-heaven. A slanting ray lingered on the woody crest of the precipices that overhung some parts of the river, giving greater depth to the dark gray and purple of the rocky sides. A sloop was loitering in the distance, dropping slowly down with the tide, her sail hanging uselessly against the mast, as a reflection of the glass of the sky gleamed along the still water. It seemed as if the vessel was suspended in the air. It was toward evening that Ichabod arrived at the castle of Heer Van Tassel, which he found thronged with the pride and flower of the adjacent country. Old farmers, a spare leathern race, in homespun coats and breeches, blue stockings, huge shoes, and magnificent pewter buckles. Their brisk, withered little dames, in close-crimped caps, long-waisted short gowns, homespun petticoats, with scissors and pincushions and gay calico pockets hanging on the outside. Bosom lasses, almost as antiquated as their mothers, excepting where a straw hat, a fine ribbon, or perhaps a white frock, gave symptoms of city innovation. The sons in short, square-skirted coats, with rows of stupendous brass buttons, and their hair generally queued in the fashion of the times, especially if they could procure an eel skin for the purpose, it being esteemed throughout the country as a potent nourisher and strengthener of the hair. Brom Bones, however, was the hero of the scene. Having come to the gathering on his favorite steed Daredevil, a creature, like himself, full of mettle and mischief, which no one but himself could manage. He was, in fact, noted for preferring vicious animals, given to all kinds of tricks, which kept the rider in a constant risk of his neck, for he held a tractable, well-broken horse as unworthy of a lad of spirit. Fain would I pause to dwell upon the world of charms that burst upon the enraptured gaze of my hero, as he entered the state parlor of Van Tassel's mansion. Not those of the bevy of bosom lasses, with their luxurious display of red and white, but the ample charms of a genuine Dutch country tea-table in the sumptuous time of autumn. Such heaped upon platters of cakes of various and almost indescribable kinds, known only to experienced Dutch housewives. There was the doughy donut, the tender olie-koek, the crisp and crumbling cruller, sweet cakes and short cakes and ginger cakes and honey cakes, and the whole family of cakes. And then there were apple pies and peach pies and pumpkin pies, besides slices of ham and smoked beef, and moreover delectable dishes of preserved plums and peaches and pears and quinces, and not to mention broiled shad and roasted chickens, together with bowls of milk and cream, all mingled higgledy-piggledy pretty much as I've enumerated them, with the motherly teapot sending up its clouds of vapor from the mist. Heaven bless the mark! I want breath and time to discuss this banquet as it deserves, and I am too eager to get on with my story. Happily, Ichabod Crane was not in so great a hurry as his historian, but did ample justice to every dainty, like a proper hobbit. He was a kind and thankful creature, whose heart dilated in proportion as his skin was filled with good cheer, whose spirits rose with eating, as some men's do with drink. He could not help, too, rolling his large eyes around him as he ate, and chuckling with the possibility that he might one day be lord of all this scene of almost unimaginable luxury and splendor. Then he thought, how soon he'd turn his back upon the old schoolhouse, snap his fingers in the face of Hans Van Ripper and every other niggardly patron, and kick his itinerant pedagogue out of doors that should dare call him comrade. Old Baltus Van Tassel moved among his guests with a face dilated with content and good humor, round and jolly as the harvest moon. His hospitable attentions were brief but expressive, being confined to a shake of the hand, a slap on the shoulder, a loud laugh, and a pressing invitation to fall to and help themselves. And now the sound of the music from the common room or hall summoned to the dance. The musician was an old gray-headed black man who had been the itinerant orchestra of the neighborhood for more than half a century. His instrument was as old and battered as himself. The greater part of the time he scraped on 2 or 3 strings, accompanying every movement of the bow with a motion of the head, bowing almost to the ground and stamping with his foot whenever a fresh couple were to start. Ichabod prided himself on his dancing as much upon his vocal powers. Not a limb, not a fibre about him was idle, and to have seen his loosely hung frame in full motion and clattering about the room, you would have thought St. Vitus himself, that blessed patron of the dance, was figuring before you in person. He was the admiration of all the black people who, having gathered of all ages and sizes from the farm and the neighborhood, stood forming a pyramid of shining black faces at every door and window, gazing with delight at the scene, rolling their white eyebrows and showing grinning rows of ivory from ear to ear. How could the flogger of urchins be otherwise than animated and joyous? The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance, and smiling graciously in reply to all his amorous oglings, while Brom Bones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding by himself in one corner. When the dance was at an end, Ichabod was attracted to a knot of sager folks, who, with old Van Tassel, sat smoking at one end of the piazza, gossiping over former times and drawing out long stories about the war. This neighborhood, at the time of which I am speaking, was one of those highly favored places which abound with chronicle and great men. The British and American line had run near it during the war. It had, therefore, been the scene of marauding and infested with refugees, cowboys, and all kinds of border chivalry. Just sufficient time had elapsed to enable each storyteller to dress up his tale with a little becoming fiction, and in the indistinctness of his recollection make himself the hero of every exploit. There was the story of Doffu Martling, a large blue-bearded Dutchman who had nearly taken a British frigate with an old iron 9-pounder from a mud breastwork, only that his gun burst at the 6th discharge. And then there was an old gentleman who shall be nameless, being too rich a mynheer to be lightly mentioned, who, in the Battle of White Plains, being an excellent master of defense, parried a musket ball with a small sword, insomuch that he absolutely felt it whiz round the blade and glance off at the hilt, in proof of which he was ready at any time to show the sword with the hilt a little bent. There were several more that had been equally great on the field, not one of whom was persuaded that he had a considerable hand in bringing the war to a happy termination. But all these were nothing to the tales of ghosts and apparitions that succeeded. The neighborhood is rich in legendary treasures of the kind. Local tales and superstitions thrive best in these sheltered, long-settled retreats, but are trampled underfoot by the shifting throng that forms the population of most of our country places. Besides, there is no encouragement for ghosts in most of our villages, for they have scarcely had time to finish their first nap and turn themselves in their graves before their surviving friends have traveled away from the neighborhood, so that when they turn out at night to walk their rounds, they have no acquaintance left to call upon. This is perhaps the reason why we seldom hear of ghosts except in our long-established Dutch communities. The immediate cause, however, of the prevalence of supernatural stories in these parts was doubtless owing to the vicinity of Sleepy Hollow. There was a contagion in the very air that blew from the haunted region. It breathed forth an atmosphere of dreams and fancies infecting all the land. Several of the Sleepy Hollow people were present at Van Tassel's, and, as usual, were doling out their wild and wonderful legends. Many dismal tales were told about the funeral trains, and mourning cries and wailings heard and seen about the great tree where the unfortunate Major Andre was taken, and which stood in the neighborhood. Some mention was made also of the woman in white that haunted the dark glen at Raven Rock, and was often heard to shriek on winter nights before a storm, having perished there in the snow. The chief part of these stories, however, turned upon the favorite spectre of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, who had been heard several times of late patrolling the country, and, it was said, tethered his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard. The sequestered situation of this church seems to have always made it a favorite haunt of troubled spirits. It stands on a knoll, surrounded by locust trees and lofty elms, from among which its decent whitewashed walls shine modestly forth, like Christian purity beaming through the shades of retirement. A gentle slope descends from it to a silver sheet of water, bordered by high trees, between which peeps may be caught at the high blue hills of the Hudson. To look upon its grass-grown yard, where the sunbeams seem to sleep so quietly, one would think that there at least the dead might rest in peace. On one side of the church extends a wide woody dell, along which raves a large brook among broken rocks and trunks of fallen trees. Over a deep black part of the stream, not far from the church, which was formerly thrown a wooden bridge, the road that led to it, and the bridge itself, were thickly shaded by overhanging trees, which cast a gloom about it, even in daytime, but occasioned a fearful darkness at night. Such was one of the favorite haunts of the Headless Horseman, and the place where he was most frequently encountered. The tale was told of old Brower, a most heretical disbeliever in ghosts. How he met the horseman returning from his foray into Sleepy Hollow, and was obliged to get up behind him. How they galloped over brush and brake, over hill and swamp, until they reached the bridge, when the horseman suddenly turned into a skeleton, threw old Brower into the brook, and sprang away over the treetops with a clap of thunder. This story was immediately matched by a thrice marvelous adventure of Brom Bones, who made light of the galloping Hessian as an errant jockey. He affirmed that on returning one night from the neighboring village of Sing Sing, he had been overtaken by this midnight trooper. He had offered to race with him for a bowl of punch, and should have won it too, for Daredevil beat the goblin horse All Hollow. But just as they came to the church bridge, the Hessian bolted and vanished in a flash of fire. All these tales, told in that drowsy undertone with which men talk in the dark, the countenances of the listeners only now and then receiving a casual gleam from the glare of a pipe, sank deep in the mind of Ichabod. He repaid them in kind with large extracts from his invaluable author, Cotton Mather, and added many marvelous events that had taken place in his native state of Connecticut, and fearful sights which he had seen in his nightly walks about Sleepy Hollow. The revel now gradually broke up. The old farmers gathered together their families and their wagons, and were heard for some time rattling along the hollow roads and over distant hills. Some of the damsels mounted on pillions behind their favorite swains, and their light-hearted laughter, mingling with the clatter of hoofs, echoed along the silent woodlands, sounding fainter and fainter until they gradually died away, and the late scene of noise and frolic was all silent and deserted. Ichabod only lingered behind, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, fully convinced that he was now on the high road to success. What passed at this interview I will not pretend to say, for in fact I do not know. Something, however, I fear me, must have gone wrong, for he certainly sallied forth, after no very great interval, with an air quite desolate and chapfallen. Oh, these women, these women! Could that girl have been playing off any of her coquettish tricks? Was her encouragement of the poor pedagogue all a mere sham to secure her conquest of his rival? Heaven only knows, not I. Let it suffice to say, Ichabod stole forth with the air of one who had been sacking a hen-roost rather than a fair lady's heart. Without looking to the right or left to notice the scene of rural wealth on which he had so often gloated, He went straight to the stable, and with several hearty cuffs and kicks roused his steed most uncourteously from the comfortable quarters in which he was soundly sleeping, dreaming of mountains of corn and oats and whole valleys of timothy and clover. It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homeward, along the sides of the lofty hills which rise above Tarrytown, and which he had traversed so cheerily in the afternoon. The hour was as dismal as himself. Far below him the Tappan Zee spread its dusky and indistinct waste of waters, with here and there the tall mast of a sloop riding quietly at anchor under the land. In the dead hush of midnight, he could even hear the barking of the watchdog from the opposite shore of the Hudson, but it was so vague and faint as only to give an idea of his distance from his faithful companion of man. Now and then, too, the long-drawn crowing of a cock, accidentally awakened, would sound far, far off, from some farmhouse away among the hills, but it was like the dreaming sound in his ear. No sign of life occurred near him, but occasionally the melancholy chirp of a cricket, or perhaps the guttural twang of a bullfrog from a neighboring marsh, as if sleeping uncomfortably and turning suddenly in his bed. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had heard in the afternoon now came crowding upon his recollection. The night grew darker and darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky, and driving clouds occasionally hid them from his sight. He had never felt so lonely and dismal. He was, moreover, approaching the very place where many of the scenes of the ghost stories had been laid. In the center of the road stood an enormous tulip tree, which towered like a giant above all the other trees of the neighborhood, and formed a kind of landmark. Its limbs were gnarled and fantastic, large enough to form trunks for ordinary trees, twisting down almost to the earth and rising again into the air. It was connected with the tragical story of the unfortunate Andre, who had been taken prisoner hard by, and was universally known by the name of Major Andre's tree. The common people regarded it with a mixture of respect and superstition, partly out of sympathy for the fate of its ill-starred namesake, and partly from the tales of strange sights and doleful lamentations told concerning it. As Ichabod approached this fearful tree, he began to whistle. He thought that his whistle was answered, but it was but a blast sweeping sharply through the dry branches. As he approached a little nearer, he thought he saw something white hanging in the midst of a tree. He paused and ceased whistling, but, on looking more narrowly, perceived that it was a place where the tree had been scathed by lightning and the white wood laid bare. Suddenly he heard a groan, his teeth chattered, and his knees smote against the saddle, and the rubbing of one huge bough upon the other, as they were swayed about by the breeze. He passed the tree in safety, but new perils lay before him. About 200 yards from the tree, a small brook crossed the road and ran into a marshy and thickly wooded glen known by the name of Wiley Swamp. A few rough logs, laid side by side, served for a bridge over this stream. On that side of the road where the brook entered the wood, a group of oaks and chestnuts matted thickened with wild grapevines threw a cavernous gloom over it. To pass this bridge was the severest trial. It was at this identical spot that the unfortunate Andre was captured, and under the covert of those chestnuts and vines were the sturdy yeomen concealed who surprised him. This has ever since been considered a haunted stream, and fearful are the feelings of the schoolboy who has to pass it alone after dark. As he approached the stream, his heart began to thump. He summoned up, however, all his resolution, and gave his horse half a score of kicks in the ribs, and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. But instead of starting forward, the perverse old animal made a lateral movement, and ran broadside against the fence. Ichabod, whose fears increased with the delay, jerked the reins on the other side, and kicked lustily with the contrary foot. It was all in vain. His steed started, it is true, but it was only to plunge to the opposite side of the road, into a thicket of brambles and alder bushes. The schoolmaster now bestowed both whip and heel upon the starveling ribs of old Gunpowder, who dashed forward, snuffling and snorting, but came to stand just by the bridge, with a suddenness that nearly sent his rider sprawling over his head. Just at this moment, a plashy tramp by the side of the bridge caught the sensitive ear of Ichabod. In the dark shadow of the grove, on the margin of the brook, he beheld something huge, misshapen, and towering. It stirred not, but seemed gathered up in the gloom, like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveller. The hair of the affrighted pedagogue rose upon his head with terror. What was to be done? To turn and fly now was too late. And besides, what chance was there of escaping ghost or goblin, if such it was, if he could ride upon the winds of the wind? Summoning up, therefore, a show of courage, he demanded in stammering accents, Who are you? He received no reply. He repeated his demand in a still more agitated voice. Still there was no answer. Once more he cudgelled the sides of the inflexible Gunpowder, and shutting his eyes, broke forth with involuntary fervour into a psalm tune. Just then the shadowy object of alarm put itself into motion, and with a scramble and a bound stood at once in the middle of the road. Though the night was dark and dismal, yet the form of the unknown might in some degree be ascertained. He appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, and mounted on a black horse of powerful frame. He made no offer of molestation or sociability, but kept aloof on one side of the road, jogging along on the blind side of old Gunpowder, who had now got over his fright and waywardness. Ichabod, who had no relish for this strange midnight companion, bethought himself of the adventure of Brom Bones with the galloping Hessian, now quickened his steed in hopes of leaving him behind. The stranger, however, quickened his horse to an equal pace. Ichabod pulled up and fell into a walk, thinking to lag behind. The other did the same. His heart began to sink within him. He endeavored to resume his psalm tune, but his parched tongue clove to the roof of his mouth, and he could not utter a stave. There was something in the moody and dogged silence of this pertinacious companion that was mysterious and appalling. It was soon fearfully accounted for. On mounting a rising ground, which brought the figure of his fellow traveller in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in a cloak, Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless. But his horror was still more increased on observing that the head, which should have rested on his shoulders, was carried before him on the pommel of his saddle. His terror rose to desperation. He had rained a shower of kicks and blows upon Gunpowder, hoping by a sudden movement to give his companion the slip. But the spectre started full jump with him. Away then they dashed, through thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. Ichabod's flimsy garments fluttered in the air as he stretched his long, lank body away over his horse's head in the eagerness of his flight. They had now reached the road which turns off to Sleepy Hollow, but Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with a demon, instead of keeping up it, made an opposite turn and plunged headlong downhill to the left. This road leads through a sandy hollow shaded by trees for about a quarter of a mile, where it crosses the bridge famous in Goblin story, and just beyond swells the green knoll on which stands the whitewashed church. As yet, the panic of the steed had given his unskilful rider an apparent advantage in the chase, but just as he had got halfway through the hollow, the girths of the saddle gave way, and he felt it slipping from under him. He seized it by the pommel, endeavored to hold it firm, but in vain. Had just time to save himself by clasping old Gunpowder round the neck, when the saddle fell to the earth, and he heard it trampled underfoot by his pursuer. For a moment the terror of Hans Van Ripper's wrath passed across his mind, for it was his Sunday saddle, but this was no time for petty fears. The goblin was hard on his haunches, and unskilful rider that he was, he had much ado to maintain his seat, sometimes slipping on one side, sometimes on another, and sometimes jolted on the high ridge of his horse's backbone with a violence that he verily feared would cleave him asunder. An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hopes that the church bridge was at hand. The wavering reflection of a silver star in the bosom of the brook told him that he was not mistaken. He saw the walls of the church dimly glaring under the trees beyond. He recollected the place where Brom Bones's ghostly competitor had disappeared. If I can but reach the bridge, thought Ichabod, I am safe. Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him. He even fancied that he felt his hot breath. Another convulsive kick in the ribs, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge. He thundered over the resounding planks. He gained the opposite side, and now Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuer would vanish, according to rule, in a flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising in his stirrups, and in the very act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod endeavored to dodge the horrible missile, but too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash, and he was tumbled headlong into the dust. And Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning, the old horse was found without his saddle, and with the bridle under his feet, soberly cropping the grass at his master's gate. Ichabod did not make his appearance at breakfast. Dinner hour came, but no Ichabod. The boys assembled at the schoolhouse and strolled idly about the banks of the brook, but no schoolmaster. Hans Van Ripper now began to feel some uneasiness about the fate of poor Ichabod and his saddle. An inquiry was set on foot, and after diligent investigation they came upon his traces. In one part of the road leading to the church was found the saddle trampled in the dirt. The tracks of horses' hoofs, deeply dented in the road and evidently at furious speed, were traced to the bridge, beyond which, on the bank of a broad part of the brook, where the water ran deep and black, was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside it a shattered pumpkin. The brook was searched, but the body of the schoolmaster was not to be discovered. Hans Van Ripper, as executor of his estate, examined the bundle which contained all of his worldly effects. They consisted of 2 shirts and a half, 2 stocks for the neck, a pair or 2 of worsted stockings, an old pair of corduroy small clothes, a rusty razor, a book of psalm tunes full of dog-ears, and a broken pitch-pipe. As to the books and furniture of the schoolhouse, they belonged to the community, excepting Cotton Mather's History of Witchcraft, a New England Almanac, and a book of dreams and fortune-telling, in which last was a sheet of foolscap much scribbled and blotted in several fruitless attempts to make a copy of verses in honor of the heiress of Van Tassel. These magic books and the poetic scrawl were forthwith consigned to the flames by Hans Van Ripper, who, from that time forward, determined to send his children no more to school, observing that he never knew any good come of the same reading and writing. Whatever money the schoolmaster possessed, he had received his quarter's pay but a day or two before, he must have had about his person at the time of his disappearance. The mysterious event caused much speculation at the church on the following Sunday. Knots of gazers and gossips were collected in the churchyard, at the bridge, and at the spot where the hat and the pumpkin had been found. The stories of Brower, of Bones, and a whole budget of others were called to mind, and when they had diligently considered them all, and compared them with the symptoms of the present case, they shook their heads and came to the conclusion that Ichabod had been carried off by the galloping Hessian. As he was a bachelor and in nobody's debt, nobody troubled his head any more about him. The school was removed to a different quarter of the hollow, and another pedagogue reigned in his stead. It is true, an old farmer who had been down to New York on a visit several years after, and from whom this account of the ghostly adventure was received, brought home the intelligence that Ichabod Crane was still alive, and that he had left the neighborhood partly through fear of the goblin and Hans Van Ripper, and partly in mortification at having been suddenly dismissed by the heiress. that he had changed his quarters to a distant part of the country, had kept school and studied law at the same time. He had been admitted to the bar, turned politician, electioneered, written for the newspapers, and finally made a justice of the 10-pound court. Brom Bones, too, who, shortly after his rival's disappearance, conducted the blooming Katrina in triumph to the altar, and was observed to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod was related, and always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin, which led some to suspect that he knew more about the matter than he chose to tell. The old country wives, however, who are the best judges of these matters, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means, and it is the favorite story often told about the neighborhood around the winter evening fire. The bridge became more than ever an object of superstitious awe, and may be the reason why the road has been altered of late years, so as to approach the church by the border of the mill pond. The schoolhouse, being deserted, soon fell to decay, and was reported to be haunted by the ghost of the unfortunate pedagogue, and the ploughboy, loitering homeward of a still summer evening, has often fancied his voice at a distance, chanting in a melancholy solemn tune among the tranquil solitudes of Sleepy Hollow. And there is a postscript found in the handwriting of Mr. Knickerbocker. The preceding tale is given almost in the precise words which I heard it related at a corporation meeting at the ancient city of Mahatos, at which were present many of its sagest and most illustrious burghers. The narrator was a pleasant, shabby, gentlemanly old fellow in pepper and salt clothes, with a sadly humorous face, and one whom I strongly suspected of being poor. He made such efforts to be entertaining. When his story was concluded, there was much laughter and approbation, particularly from 2 or 3 deputy aldermen, who had been asleep the greater part of the time. There was, however, one tall, dry-looking old gentleman with beetling eyebrows, who maintained a grave and rather severe face throughout, now and then folding his arms, inclining his head, and looking down upon the floor, as if turning a doubt over in his mind. He was one of your wary men, who never laugh but upon good grounds, when they have reason and law on their side. When the mirth of the rest of the company had subsided and silence was restored, he leaned one arm on the elbow of his chair, and sticking the other akimbo, demanded, with a slight but exceedingly sage motion of the head and contraction of the brow, what was the moral of the story, and what it went to prove? The storyteller, who was just putting a glass of wine to his lips as a refreshment after his toil, paused for a moment, looked at his inquirer with an air of infinite deference, and lowering the glass slowly to the table, observed that the story was intended most logically to prove that there is no situation in life but has its advantages and pleasures, provided we will but take a joke as we find it. That, therefore, he that runs races with goblin troopers is likely to have rough riding of it. Ergo, for a country schoolmaster to be refused the hand of a Dutch heiress is a certain step to high preferment in the state. The cautious old gentleman knit his brows tenfold closer after this explanation, being sorely puzzled by the ratiocination of the syllogism, while, methought, the one in pepper and salt eyed him with something of a triumphant leer. At length he observed that all this was very well, but he still thought the story a little on the extravagant. There were 1 or 2 points on which he had his doubts. "Faith, sir," replied the storyteller, "as to that matter, I don't believe one half of it myself." The end. And that, my friends, is the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. All right. Whew. Oh my God, Gorendis! Thank you for the resub. 49 months. That's actually my favorite number. Don't know why. I think it's because I used to play 3 and 9's a while before you get a free card when I was a kid. Takako! I got to hang out with Takako all day long at the Signum Space Showcase. It was so much fun. Anyhow, I'm going to turn the light on because it's kind of gloomy in here. Hi. How y'all doing? we're going to go, since I've only been talking for an hour and a half, we're going to do, we're going to play a video game. I'm going to play a video game because the Headless Horseman is such a part of Halloween tradition now. It's become part of the public consciousness. Like, every video game does something for Halloween. Almost every single damn one of them does. And every year, for years and years and years and years, I still play World of Warcraft. Thank you, Arendis. I appreciate you doing that. I couldn't hear any of the... If the alerts have any audio, I couldn't hear that because I have my headphones on. Lord of the Rings Online has a Halloween thing called The Haunted Burrow. I'll be dropping in on that later this evening when my timer is up. Dungeons and Dragons Online does a thing called Night Rebels where they take certain of their dungeons and turn them into a Halloween thing, and then you get Halloween stuff. It's really cool. It's really awesome when the game spawns a beholder wearing a pumpkin mask, which is literally the beholder is a pumpkin with eyeballs coming out of it. It's so freaking cool. And I'm gonna plop this away because I'm done with it. Boop. And we're gonna play a video game. I'm gonna change the stream title real quick and plop a game. So we're gonna play World of Warcraft because this year they actually just put in a new story because they have a Headless Horseman who does a couple of different things. There's 2 main events. Like, you can go trick-or-treating all over Azeroth and Outland and wherever. But you can also fight the Headless Horseman twice. The Shade of the Horseman in one of the starter towns, not the main city, the capitals, but one of the starter towns. Or you can queue up to fight the actual Headless Horseman. But the Headless Horseman is a person. Was a person they took in the lore, has very much nothing to do with the real story of the Headless Horseman that we just read. And they basically made a game version of it. He does throw pumpkins. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to do the Headless Horseman stuff in World of Warcraft to round out the other hour and a half of my time. So let me change the stream title. Give it the category that it's supposed to. Like, you type W in, it's automatically going to go to World of Warcraft. Alright. WoW's Headless Horseman Shenanigans. Alright. So if you've never played World of Warcraft, you're not going to learn how to play World of Warcraft. I'm going to open up Battle.net real quick. Thank you for being here, everybody. It's always a question is, are folks going to show up and listen to me read? Are they going to go to their Halloween? I do want to note, by the way, that the image you see here, I found a clip art of this, and I decided to make my own copy. So while you can, Google Headless Horseman clip art or something, and you'll find an image very similar to this. I use it strictly for reference sake, but I did my own copy of it. So let's boot up the Worlds of Warcraft real quick. And I think XSplit should be able to find it. I don't know how long my voice is going to last. I was like, I should probably take a sip of my soda here real quick. Because one of the cool things about soda, which it's very bad for you, but it's really good for your throat. Oh, the game boots up. I did not click the play button. It helps if I click the play button. And I'm sad that I missed Master Vethlo. Elmore heading out early. It's always good to see him. So we're gonna play a little bit here. By the way, Helionics, you can appreciate this. Yes, I did get the PvP set. For Mage, for Shadow Priest, do I have my Shadow Priest wearing it? She is wearing, well, she's not the one I did the thing on, but I got the wings. I got my wings. I did get them. And I also got the one for the Paladin because Paladins are awesome. We're gonna play this character. She's my main. My oldest WoW character. And we're going to go to Stormwind. You can also do this on the Horde side. You have to go to, I think, right outside Orgrimmar. I just happen to know the Alliance side because I play Alliance more. So we're going to play a little World of Warcraft. And I'm going to play through the the new story they created, a little bit of backstory about the in-game Headless Horseman. And we're also going to go to the Shade of Horseman event. And then we are going to... I'm going to ride a dragon here. By the way, you can ride dragons in Dragonflight. Surprise! We're going to go to Stormwind, where I have not been actually paying attention to the fact that you can get an XP boost there, which I really should use. Alright, so Stormwind is the capital of the Alliance. The blue team, depending on whom you ask, they might be the good guys. If you are Horde, who are the red team, who are also in their own eyes the good guys, go figure that one out. I don't understand it. And since this is the time of the Headless Horseman, I'm going to mount up appropriately. Alright, I'm going to put this down here so I can actually find it. Here we go. The Horseman's mount. There was one year I was very, very good, had really good luck, and wound up getting both the Headless Horseman mount and what used to be called the Love Rocket until they appropriately changed the name to the X41 Heartbreaker. And I just love that they just put Halloween hats on everything, right? And pumpkins all over the place. I actually kind of like the one with Sylvanas over in What's It Face. Anyhow, you come over here and you need to talk to, I believe it's Jesper. Could be wrong. It is Jesper. Alright. It is not Jesper, I lied. Maybe it's the Orphan Matron?
King's honor, friend.
Okay. Yes, here it is. Excuse me, Kiriana, is it? You've made quite a name for yourself lately, for both the living and the dead. I have in my possession the tome of Thomas Thompson. For years it has been in my library, a reminder of times we must not forget. Imagine my surprise when the tome flings itself to the floor, falling open to a page with a single name on it. Yours, Kiriana. Creepy. If Thomas's spirit is trying to reach you, I think you should take this. Perhaps he awaits at the Scarlet Monastery. Look for Thomas Thompson near the Scarlet Monastery in Tearsful Glades. Now, it's easier to get to this if you're Horde.
Farewell.
Because the Scarlet Monastery is... We're in the Eastern Kingdoms. It's way the heck up there. And it's basically right next door to the... a former Horde capital. So, for us to get there quickly, we could either just ride up ourselves... Or you could take the Flight Master as close as possible, which I believe... Not you. Over here. You. The Griffin Keeper. Nope. Griffin Master, you. The closest we can get to it is Hearthglen. I'm going to go to see my WoW boyfriend real quick. Anybody who knows what I love about WoW, it's Tyrion Fordring. The sadly late Tyrion Fordring. We'll go say hi to him since he's still alive in this time. So, in World of Warcraft, they have a couple of different things going on. All the inns will have a candy bucket that you can get some candy out of every, and you get XP if you're low level. For those of us, you can't actually see him, but when the event is up, Goldshire down here will have the the Headless Horseman flying overhead. Apparently we're flying very much the wrong way, but that's okay. No, we're actually going the right way. And it's just going to take a while. I wish I should have done this on a mage character, honestly, but can't teleport up. I could have gone to, like...
So eager you are for my blood to spill, yet to vanquish me, 'tis my head you must kill.
So that's one of the rhyming couplets that you hear in Goldshire when everybody attacks the Shade of the Horseman. Because you can attack the Shade of the Horseman and get stuff out of, like a pumpkin head will fall down in the middle of town. You loot the pumpkin. You can do it once a day. You might get the magic broom, which is, up until now, the only way you could get a broom mount in the game, but it disappeared at the end of Hallow's End every year. Unless you were currently riding on one. If you were still riding on one, you could stay riding on it as long as you didn't dismount. I might have a couple of vaults on a server I don't normally play, sitting next to Terra and Diva, two of my favorite people, near their NPCs in Stormwind by the cathedral, just sitting there, sitting on their broomsticks. And it's the OGs, the old broomsticks. But this year, not only did they add these, a little bit of a refresh to the holiday event, and we're going to go through the Horseman fight. I'm going to do it in order, so it's going to take a little bit of time, because I'm not in queue for it right now. I'm not gonna queue up until I'm actually ready to do the Horseman fight, because once we finish the stuff we're about to do, we'll get a quest to go fight the Horseman, so we might as well do it in sequence. So we're going to get to the part where we're told to go kill the Horseman, but we're going to go back to Goldshire, because Moonguard. Well, I'm not on Moonguard, actually. I'm on Bronzebeard. DDO has a buckler called Moonguard, and every time I see the name, I snicker like a 12-year-old. But we're going to pop in. We're going to do the Shade event in Goldshire, because that's the one easiest for me to get to. And then we will go and queue up for the actual Prime fight. So the event in Goldshire is basically you talk to the matron, start the quest, and what it does is the Shade rides around above and starts throwing these little fires down, and you have to use water buckets to put the fires out. And if you get the fires out, then he pops down where you fight him, and if you fight him, then yeah, you do the things. So once we're done with this, we'll probably wind up raiding somebody, and I just saw Devil Lord just went live, so we'll probably send John over to him. He's awesome. He used to work at Blizz. He now works at Wonderstorm after a stint at TikTok for a little bit. Awesome, awesome dude. And we'll be coming up here soon again. Soon. Up this way, kinda, maybe, sorta. Maybe a little bit further north. This game is actually really beautiful. They've made some changes recently to increase the draw distance. If this were Kalimdor, the other primary OG continent, you could see a damn sword all the way out there. But this is not Kalimdor, so there's not a sword sticking up out of the wounds in the planet, if you know what I'm talking about. Helionyx knows what I'm talking about. So this weekend, well, next weekend actually, a week from today will be the end of BlizzCon. Sadly, I will be working both days. Well, not working. Working on Saturday. Because Signum University has Mountain Moot out in Denver. I think it's in Denver? Question mark. It's out that way. It's out Denver words. And on Friday, it's we're doing our Extra Life charity campaign. So, I would highly recommend probably tuning in Friday on twitch.tv/Lotro stream all damn day long. I myself will be on from 2 to 4 right after Cordovan. Because trolling Cordovan is my life. No, it actually isn't. But it's fun. It's fun if you know the limits of trolling somebody. That's the trick of trolling your friends, is knowing what the limits are. And so we're going to be raising money for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, which, unlike what one of our teammates tweeted earlier today, does not buy gaming stuff for kids. What it does, it's a children's charity with the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, mostly here in America, which the money that is donated is used to help with the actual care of the kids. Like, stuff that you need when you're, you have a kid that's in a hospital, right? Things like toiletries, deodorant, clothes and diapers and, all the usual things that you need to care for a kid, and also to, defray some of the costs of their care. The Extra Life charity raises millions and millions of dollars. And it's always been humbling and very, humbling that the Lotro and DDO stream communities, or the Lotro community, the Lotro and DDO game communities, the player communities, are so giving and generous of not only their time to promote it, to let people know, hey, we're doing this thing, but also for those who stream it, because it's a lot to stream sometimes, I'm not going to lie. And also, just the giving generously to help these kids. Because what the charity does is it makes it so that these kids can get care for free at the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And even though I do have a local hospital here, I do kind of want to help support Boston Children's because, I've had friends who've had their kids, helped up there. Pardon me. See, this is kind of Halloween-y. Look at that. That's a Halloween town. This is the Forsaken. This is their aesthetic. They need to stop plaguing everybody. But we're going to go visit a town that I didn't really need to fly all this way, but I did want to go talk to my WoW boyfriend, who will say hi. We'll give him a hug and a smooch, and then we will go. Reminds me, I need to go hop on Wrath Classic for a while. And I need to complete a certain quest line before they go to Cataclysm Classic. Because when World of Warcraft went to Cataclysm, they revamped the Eastern and Western Plaguelands, and they took out a specific quest line that I really, really want to do. And I want to catalog it too. So I plan on actually, maybe not streaming it, but at least recording it. So let's go talk to my WoW boyfriend real quick. Actually, there's his statue, which you can still see in Old Dalaran. But we gotta go talk to the man. He's still alive, I think. Yeah, Hearthgren. So basically, Tyrion Fordring, the reason why I like him so much is he's not hardcore alliance, right? He is hardcore ethical. He gave up everything, including his wife and kid, because he couldn't kill somebody in cold blood. He was ordered to slay Eitrig. See, here he is.
We shall triumph.
And yeah. I'm going to tell you a quick story, though, while this player from this Winterhoop is here. I'm going to hug Tyrion, though. Is once upon a time, I was at BlizzCon. It was 2015, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And I was 2 years into a quest to find out who does his voice acting. Because he's my favorite. And nobody knew who was his voice actor. And the reason I was interested in asking, or why I was interested in the question, well, besides the fact that it's like, man, I love this character. Who does the voice? Is the simple fact, see, I got an Ashbringer too, only yours is bigger than mine. Was because a character in Star Wars The Old Republic sounded remarkably like him. And I wondered if it was the same actor. But the way SWTOR does it is they don't note the names of lesser characters. It's just like big, long, honking list of practically every Hollywood voice actor. And they didn't specify this person is playing this character, like, that the female trooper is Jennifer Hale, right? That kind of thing. So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna stop hanging out with Tyrion, or else I will never leave. So 2 years of going back and forth, and I happened to go to Star Wars Celebration that year, and met with Orion Kellogg. No, I didn't. I lied. I didn't meet with Orion Kellogg. Wait a minute. Headless Horseman's mount. Here we go. Right mount. And, hey, look, it's Argus in the sky. I ran into... Oh, God, what was his name? Well, I ran into a guy who at the time was VP of Finance. His name was Kevin something. Kevin Parker, yeah, I think so, was the VP of Finance for LucasArts, who gave me Orion Kellogg's email address. And Orion Kellogg, we're going to sit up here for a second. What are these things? These are level 30. Okay, so we're in the past. Sir Thomas, son of Thomas, so Thomas Thomason. And Orion told me the name of the person who did the voice of their character in Star Wars The Old Republic. And then I kept pestering the folks at... actually, I think Devilor was one of the people I pestered about this. As I pestered Devilor and Coffee Bird and whoever else was running the WoW Twitter feed at that time, asking who does the voice of Tyrion in WoW, and nobody knew. And occasionally they say, we'll check and get back to you on that. They never did. I had become friends with Taryn. Bills have told. I love this voice acting so much.
Each of you shall pay the final sum. Cry for mercy. The reckoning has come.
So this is happening over in Brill. We can go hang out in Brill real quick while I finish this story because Brill looks awesome. I don't remember where Brill is compared to where I am. It's where all the lightning is. So this is like the Horde version, and everybody wants to go to Brill, except I just got patched into the old Brill, didn't I? Yeah, I did. I got patched into the old... I'm sorry, I got patched into the modern Brill. So I need to go back. Alright, I need to go talk to Zadormi. Wherever she is. Where is she? Where is she? I don't see her. That's unfortunate. Well, damn it. Okay, Brill is cool. Let's just say Brill is cool. The main thing is there are 2 phases of this area now. And one of them is modern levels. What's your level down here? You're at level 30, so we're good. We're okay. Alright. We're back here. Hi. So... for like a couple of years, I kept poking at the folks at Blizzard to tell me who played Tyrion. And I'd quite given up on it, quite frankly. And what happened was, I was at BlizzCon that year, hanging out with Russell Brower, who was amazing and awesome. I still keep in touch with that guy. In fact, occasionally, when I'll text him, because he was stupid enough to give me his phone number, he'll send me pictures of his cat, Figaro. Guys send me pictures of their cats. I don't know why. They just do. Anyhow, we were just standing there chatting, blah, blah, blah. And up comes this whirlwind of a lady, blonde hair, jewelry all over, looking very, very like a force of nature kind of person. Rolls up, greets Russell cheerfully. Yeah, this is true, Elda. I could be getting dick pics. Yeah, no. I prefer the cat pics way more. Especially the most recent one that I got from a friend was amazing. He had managed to catch his cat just in the act of meowing, and it was like, oh, this kitty. Anyhow. So the lady who rolled up, Russell introduced me to her. Her name was Andrea Toyas. She was the voice casting director for Blizzard. And I'm like, even Taryn couldn't tell me. He couldn't remember. This is like, I'd already met Taryn, become Taryn's friend, and he couldn't remember, blah, blah, blah. And so the matter, like, and I just randomly get introduced to Andrea at BlizzCon by Russell, and I asked her, and she's about to just rush away, and I caught her before she left, and I was like, hey, could you please tell me real quick, who does the voice of Tyrion in WoW? And she goes, oh, Floyd Van Buskirk, and off she went. I'm like, what the shit? Like, in 2 seconds flat, she solved a mystery that had been going on for 2 damn years. And it wound up then, you know, once I mentioned it, tweeted at her about it, or tweeted about it and said that, hey, she told me this. And the word got around, and I got quoted by Wowpedia. And then they had to have her confirm it, blah, blah, blah. And so it was like, hey, I found out who did the voice of Tyrion Bordering. Whoops, it's my fault. There's only one other thing that I'm equally proud of having done with World of Warcraft, and that is I'm personally responsible for the fact that Regarius has an NPC in the game. Mainly because they pestered Jonathan LeCraft to put him in the game. Sing fire. Is short. I'll soon retire. Alright, let's do the quest now that we're here. You knew I would come. I am once again in need of aid, and an adventure of your caliber would be most welcome. Okay, come with me. You need my help? I need your help. I thought I achieved some semblance of peace, though my sins might not be forgiven. I could at least reunite with the spirits of my beloved family, yet my wife's spirit is missing. It is as though she never existed. Hallow's End draws the shades that haunt the monastery out from the shadows. Trapped in the past, they walk the grounds repeating their nightmares. With any luck, one of them might give us answers as to what happened to her. I'm going to drop out of my British reading accent because that was fun, but I also had to consciously think about it. And I want his horse! I don't have one of those. Man, if I had one, I'd ride it all the time. So we have all these other spirits. I'm going to just ride the Headless Horseman's mount. Can he fly? Can he fly? Can he fly? He can fly. Neat. Alright. Oh no, they're everywhere! The infected, because that's a story in World of Warcraft, by the way, is... We're going to kill it! Wahahaha. I have wings, by the way. Wait, is that guy? Is that the cool? Okay, that can't be. While I was on my PvP quest of doom, chaos, and destruction. Alas, they failed. Very sad. When I was playing Horde, I hated running against these guys. There was a trio cool. I think one was gorgeous, and I forget what the last one was. And they were just the worst to ever have to deal with, because if you were Horde, you got your ass kicked. If you're Alliance and you were on their team, you loved it, because you could complete Eye of the Storm in like 5 minutes flat. It happened. I don't think that's the cool that it might just be somebody who happens to have the name, though. It might be. Anyhow. Dathrohan is the Grand Crusader who pretty much helped form the Scarlet Crusade out of the ashes of the Scarlet, or out of the Order of the Silver Hand. So basically, Dathrohan got impersonated by a demon at one point. But, yeah, Dathrohan was the one who ordered Tyrion to kill Atreg, and Tyrion refused to do it. How could you turn on us? I'm still forgetting my keybinds, because I rearranged my keybinds based on my coach. I ran with a couple of dudes to do my PvP things, and they were very kind enough to coach me on this. I didn't know. I couldn't have known what happened. How could they? By the way, I do have the Scarlet Key. I did get the Scarlet Key, so now I can go into the old things. My apologies for running off back there. There are some memories I never wish to revisit. It would seem these cruel shades to know just how to salt our wounds. I know where to look next. Okay, the Fountain Terrace, the end of this path. For the Scourge wrought havoc across Lordaeron, I used to bring Susanna there. I remember how certain I felt then in myself, in the light, in her, and my children. I wonder when it was that my path started to dim. If there's a shade that can enlighten us, they would be at the fountain. Let's press on. Be on your guard! Well, I'm a paladin. I'm not exactly on my guard. I'm not a guardian. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. It's your wife. It's a trap! We must destroy the soul stones.
The sky is dark. The fire burns. You strive in vain as fate's wheel turns.
Susanna will help me find these soul stones. That man. Yeah, Dathron was possessed by a dreadlord at one point. But the dude was still a dick beforehand. Okay, where's the next one? Our torment will never be yours. These are fallen crusaders. Where did Jerome learn such magic? Well, you know. Let's go get the last one, which is up there. Oh, even she can ride a spectral horse.
I need a target.
We'll stop Jerome for here, rides the horse.
A cleansing fire.
I've been sure I'll soon retire. Honestly, I have better luck on the Alliance side for this than on the other one. Let him go! Oh, you can read these just as well as I can. Ah! From ashes I rise and once again burn. Now shall tremble at the horseman's return. And he... Man, I want the up-res version of his horse, though. Holy crap. See, look at mine. Mine, okay, maybe they did up-res it a little bit. I don't know. Okay, so Jerome is dead. Confront the cultist, and he got killed by other people, which is awesome. And now you turn in this quest to Susanna over here. Not so very long ago, my husband begged me to leave for Kalimdor to flee the scourge. He hadn't come to bed that night, instead keeping vigil to protect us. The fear in his voice scared me, and the desperation in his eyes. Oh. I won't abandon him. Not this time. Not ever. Alright, he's retreated into the Scarlet Monastery. His ties to this place are strong, for even when he's in his corrupted form. My name is Karana, yes? My husband trusted you to help him, so I must ask the same. I intend to give chase, but I cannot save him alone. Will you join me? And then this basically leads you to go do the actual Headless Horseman quest, which you can do as many times as you want. You can only loot him once a day. while the event is up. So we are going to take the next step. Was actually we're going to go back to Stormwind.
You've tried and failed. Let there be no doubt. Justice prevails.
Justice. All right, we're actually gonna take a dip through Dalaran, the new G Dalaran, and then we'll go to Stormwind. We're gonna do the next segment. We're gonna do that thing that you heard in the background, but we're gonna do it over on the Alliance side. We're gonna do that on the Alliance side. Why am I getting thingies in Discord? It's because we did thingies for... I don't know why I'm getting it. It doesn't matter. Did somebody make a really cute sound? Oh my god, all the mounts. Is Pepe here? No, Burb. Alright. Let's get to where we're going, which is Stormwind. Which is technically just a waypoint to... Let's see, is Pepe there? Nope. Zoop. Get your freaking goblin copter out of the way. Alright, I will read that later. Yep, it's a Headless Horseman's mount, but there's a lot of things in this game that have not yet gotten a newer model. There's some things that look really cool, like this fish mount that I have. Check this fish mount out. And it does this. It's one of my favorites. Alright. Maybe they did give it a little bit of resin, but I'm still seeing a lot of big polygons.
Fire consumes. You've tried.
Okay, so that one just failed.
Be no doubt. Justice prevails.
Now the thing is, if you do this and there's just not enough people, or people are not knowing how to do it, then it's going to fail. There's actually a lot of people here, so I don't know why it would have failed. Well, I'm just gonna turn in the quest because it's like right here already, so. And people just like run it back to back, so it's fine.
You need something? Have a good one. See you later.
And then you get this crudely wrapped
around.
gift that you can then open, and you might get something cool.
Safe travels. See you later.
And then you can... There, I just started the event. Let's see if anybody's paying attention.
Shelter, you're weak, you're young, and you're old. Each of you shall pay the final sum. Cry for mercy. The reckoning has come.
And so the trick really is to do one building at a time. Because one thing you'll notice is the fires keep coming back. And it looks like everybody's just out here chilling. They're not even bothering with it. That's kind of sad, actually. There's so many people here, and everybody's just standing around. Now, if you already have the broomstick, it's actually stupid easier because you just zoom. Just do that. Or if you're like a druid and have flight form, that's an instant cast. Ah. There we go. Give me a new bucket. And they'll just keep on respawning until you get enough people hitting it with enough water that it doesn't stop doing that.
King's honor, friend.
King's honor, friend to you too, buddy. times you're just basically not going to be even really paying attention to where. Don't pay attention to did your bucket land or not. Who cares? Go back in another bucket. Stop standing around. Yeah, so I don't think we're going to manage because there's just not enough people doing it. And sometimes you apparently miss.
The sky is dark. The fire burns. You strive in vain as fate's wheel turns.
You can throw water buckets to another player.
'Tis you I spoke. 'Tis you I spoke.
And sometimes you'll whip a bucket of water up there, and by the time it actually gets to where it's going, something else has already sparked into its place or something. It's annoying. But it do be what it do be. I mean, if people are actually trying to do the event and trying to focus fire on one building first, then they can actually complete it. Then once a building is out, it's done. The problem is getting the building completely out. There always seems to be a case where you just miss one of them. If you're on a flying mount, you have to force it to dismount you. Yeah.
The town still burns. A cleansing fire.
Time is short. I'll soon retire. Yeah. And sometimes you... There we go. And his rhyming couplets will depend on what is actually going on. Ah. So either he's going to tell us we failed, like you heard, or he'll say that one line that you heard earlier about, you know, it's my head you must kill. We did it!
Not a spark.
This one.
I shall send you myself to the lifeless dark.
Good day to you. Have a good one. Safe travel.
Tis you I spurn. Tis you I spurn. Tis you I spurn. Now feel!
I don't have a target.
And so you'll beat him up, and he chucks out a pumpkin.
Tis my head. Prepare yourselves. The bells have tolled.
Now I'm not seeing... Well, I can see the pumpkin, but I can't loot it because I've already done it. So we're going to get rid of the water bucket. I'm not going to do the quest again. And we're going to go back to Beldraken, because that's where my home is right now. And then we will do the... run through the event. Complete the quest. The important thing is, once you down the Headless Horseman, do not leave the instance until you complete the actual quest. Otherwise, you have to run the instance again. So again, you can run the instance once, as many times as you want, but you can only loot it once a day. So we're in Veldraken, home of the... Fish told me footprints? Oh. Interesting. So this is the current capital city. where all the dragons live. I'm gonna go see the dragon. Let's go hang out with the aspects real quick while we wait. How long is this queue? 9 minutes, should be fine. And because the Dream Surge, which is one of the current events in the game, is here, I get all these little critters over my head, and it's weird. I don't understand it. So these are the dragon aspects. Okay, some of them are missing. Where's Alexstrasza? Phasing is a thing. If I had another WoW boyfriend, it would be Caligos over here. Because look at him. He's so pretty. Let's get a good look at Caligos here. Look at him. Isn't he pretty? Hey, get out of the way. Get out of the way. He's the blue aspect. And he's glowing for some reason. What? Why are you glowing, buddy? Probably because I have to turn something into him. And there's Nor's Domu, the bronze aspect. And Alexstrasza is not present. So I must be at a time in the story where she's just not there. She's somewhere else. But I want to show you something really cool that you could do with your dragon riding mounts. Doesn't matter where I would have landed. Dragon riding mounts will protect you from fall damage. It's so cool. And you can customize your dragon riding mounts. Very much like you can customize war steeds in the Lotro. And yes, it's almost as obnoxious as checking out the war steeds in Lotro. Alright, so we're going to wait for the queue to pop, and then we're going to do the Headless Horseman fight. We're going to turn in the quest for the Headless Horseman. And then I think I'll call it an early night, because I do want to go actually do the rest of my Headless Horseman quest dailies on my various tunes. And I'm probably going to chill until my my Haunted Burrow timer is up. And then I'm going to go do my Haunted Burrow stuff. And then I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'm going to go do Amber Temple in DDO afterwards. But I'm not going to do any of that on stream. I am just going to wait for the queue to pop and we'll fight. Now, the Headless Horseman fight now has new... well, it has some... Yeah, it does. It has some new... it has some new mechanics. Like, he used to... It used to be like a 3-phase fight where he'd pop off his head after a while. And then you'd have to chase his head down. He doesn't do that anymore. You have to say, "Come back here, you idiot." He doesn't do that anymore. It's just one long fight. But there is a thing that you can do where you can pop up to 4 curses. And those curses add difficulty to the fight. And if you succeed... The more curses you have, and whether they get dispelled due to the fight, if you get stunned during the fight by a certain mechanic, the curses drop off, and then you just fight the rest of the fight normally. The reason you would want to do the extra mechanics and have all the curses on is it gets you a bigger chance at good stuff in the loot chest at the end, the loot-filled pumpkin. And the reason you might want to get the loot-filled pumpkin is that you might get some cool things, like the Horseman's Horrific Hood, which my druid, for some damn reason, has 3 of them. Or is it one of my priests? I don't know. Yeah, one of my characters has like 3 of them. Other characters are getting his Sinister Slicer, which is like an agility one-hand sword, which nobody uses. I think it used to be good for like... It would be good for rogues who don't use daggers? Question mark. And hunters back when hunters still use melee weapons, which they don't anymore. And I think what I am going to do is I went to the store the other day. I went and got what are they? Reese's Pumpkins. Like little, they're like literally about yay big. Little It's basically Reese's cups, but in the shape of a pumpkin. And they're delicious as Reese's cups are. So I got me some of those, but I also have ice cream, so I think I'm going to eat the ice cream to soothe my voice, or to soothe my throat, because it is hurting right now. But I want to get through this queue, do the fight, and send you on your merry way. Yeehaw. So it should pop shortly. And then I'm gonna kick off and go have some fun for the rest of my night. So it's been a busy week. I've been doing things every single day. I am looking forward to the new event coming for 1 week only in DDO next week, starting on Wednesday. I don't know how much time my buddy will have for that. I don't know. We'll find out. But I know he's interested in it, so we'll see. It is just basically, it's going to open up these extreme challenge dungeons, which I don't think I myself will get to participate in, because I'm potato. I am potato. Despite the fact that I'm sitting on a character... Oh, here, let me show you a proof that I actually have some PvP rank going on here. Not you. Not you. Not you. Over here. Rated. Check that shit out right there. Proof that I earned my armor. Now, to be fair, it was 3v3. Now, I'm going to be honest. I bought a boost. But the boost I bought was a self-played boost. So I had to play my own damn character. None of this, I'm not giving some random person access to my account, because fuck that noise. But basically, I had 2 people on my team who knew what the fuck they were doing, and they gave me coaching. And so I managed to get my mage. They asked me to switch to fire, which I actually really enjoy fire mage, but that character is meant to be arcane, so I do have a fire mage running around somewhere. I need to play more often, because fire mage is hella fun. Arcane mage is also really fun. I like all 3 versions of mages. I just wish I was better at making sure they did their damage so that I wouldn't get hit, because they are glass cannons. So I did my alliance mage, this paladin, and my horde shadow priest to earn the priest gear. And the really cool thing is, once you have a character on your account who is level 58 or higher, can use the same gear appearance, can use the same mog. So my level 70 horde paladin, who's never touched PvP that I can remember, maybe since Cataclysm or Mists, maybe for the legendary ring stuff, I don't know. Yeah. Here we go! Let's go! Let's do the fight! So I'm looking forward to relaxing, because that was so stressful, because I didn't know how to play, and they were helping me play. Oh, what a name. So you go talk to this worker. You can talk to any of the 4, or you just talk to the big one in the middle, and accept all 4 trials. And they turn on. And the really cool thing is, one of the nifty things that Blizz is able to do is they're able to ensure that just because I have all 4 curses on, these people could all be doing the easier mode without the curses.
Let fate choose now, the righteous one.
I'm gonna do a big popper here.
Breath incoming.
And that is the voice of Deadly Boss Mods. Gotta stay out of the purple. Because if you notice the debuffs over here, the purple tells me how many of that I'm losing health by 10% every time. And so basically you want to stay out of the purple. Stay out of the purple.
Spread.
And you want to get away from everybody else, because you're going to soak up that. There we go. And I don't really know what it is about the shadow over there doing the thing. I'm not sure what that's all about.
Breath incoming. Keep moving. Watch your feet.
I'm not sure what that's all about. All I know is that it looked like something I should go to. And one thing I've always been puzzled about this particular fight, why the tanks feel the urge to tank
Watch your feet.
in the middle of the freaking fire. Unless the tanks that I'm running with are just not on, because even the hot
Spread.
spots here are still part of the regular fight. It's only the purple puddles that are
Breath incoming.
that extra purple stuff that's flying around.
It's too far away.
I don't get it.
Come forth, my minions! Unleash your breath! Choke them with the stench of death!
Screw your minions, pal.
'Tis you I spurn!
Keep moving.
Lover!
Spread.
I'm out of range.
And see, I just got stunned, which means I just lost my
I need to
curses.
get closer.
I'm not sure what this is all about, honestly.
Watch
So
your
now I
breath
could just-
incoming.
Do the rest of the fight normally.
Have I reached before? What new adventure?
Normal loot, as expected. So basically, the reason you want to do the curses is that your chance of good loot from this this pumpkin are more likely to happen. So, alright, before we leave though, we have Sir Thomas, son of Thomas, and then we have his missus. Alright, so we saved the horseman, and now they walk off happily ever after. Hey, stones can't fly? What? Nope, 2,000 flight stones. Okay, do I still? I never thought I would find her. Now we can return to our children and rest at last. Well, thanks to you. Do you still have my tome? My story has reached its end, and I would see it penned by my own hand. Thomas glides his finger across the blank page, spectral ink marking his words. Please return this to the orphan matron, and please apologize on my behalf for frightening her, would you? Because the orphan matron was the lady who sent us on our quest, sort of. Okay.
It is done. The Headless Horseman is no more.
Then let us rest, my love. At long last.
My family is whole again, as is my soul. I cannot thank you enough, champions.
And there they go. So we need to go talk to the orphan matron. So now we can leave instance. And it'll put us back in Veldraken. Well, I think something got lost in the thing here. Hang on. Here I am. Oh. Somebody just gave me something? I don't know what happened with that, but somebody just gave me something. Oh! Come visit me, we can experiment, blah blah blah. Oh, so they told me to go visit. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. Anywho, we need to return to the orphan matron in Stormwind. Dragon riding is so much fun. And I feel bad that I haven't been able to do like the dragon riding in the old areas. And I just eventually I'm gonna get it done. Okay, so we're gonna return to the orphan matron. Just stayed in Stormwind or in Goldshire, but no, Stormwind is where I need to go. She's the one right outside the gates. All right, again with a horseman mount because we want to scare the local peasants. Our King of Stormwind is missing right now in game time. His voice actor, however, is at Music City Comic Con this weekend, so he's not streaming tomorrow that I'm aware of. Okay. Is it over then? The Headless Horseman is defeated once more, and the fallen paladin is free and at rest. What happened to the people of Lordaeron was horrifying. The least they deserve is peace and death. The tale of Sir Thomas is a harrowing one, a reminder and a warning of what horrors blind zealotry bring us. I'm glad you helped him find his peace. Aww.
Go with honor, friend.
Thank you. So, yeah. Burn the Wicker Man. So, it's a lot of fun, honestly, the Halloween events in these games. So. Okay, so, by the way, what happened to these people? Who is this? This is, Danath Trollbane. He is in honor hold right now. This is Kurdran Wildhammer, also in Outland. Khadgar used to look like this. Now he looks like Dadgar. He doesn't look like that no more. Yeah, Dadgar. And Ilaria, sister to Sylvanas. Married this dude who looks a lot better. And this dude is now currently sitting on the throne of Stormwind as regent until King Anduin Wrynn returns. But we're going to end on a happy note. We're going to go visit my friends, Taryn and Diva. I am privileged to call these two folks friends in real life. In so much that I am a moderator for both of their Twitch channels, which they never use. But that's okay. I love them anyway. And that anytime Taryn used to stream, we could hear Diva like doing a little cute sneeze off camera. And I would text her and go, bless you, Diva. Anyhow, it's Taryn. Justice! And just the funniest thing about Taryn, well, there's many fun things about Taryn. He is the cinematics director for World of Warcraft specifically. He's officially on the WoW team. Diva is an amazing voice actress, and she used to be one of the ringleaders of a group of voice actors who used to do a show called Brunch with the Bard, where they would read Shakespeare and other public domain works, and sometimes they would read them seriously, and sometimes they wouldn't. And I became acquainted with several different voice actors because of that, and they're so good. And Taryn himself has done all of the in-game cinematics since Burning Crusade, has been on the team that does those. And an even funner fact is Justice is his actual middle name. His parents, who are wandering around here in Stormwind, his parents gave him the middle name of Justice. For real. And apparently at one point his mom was a better end-game raider than he was. And probably still is, because he's busy working and she's his mom. She's retired. So amazing, amazing family of people, and I love them to bits and bits and bits. I miss them a lot. And I'm sad that I'm not going to BlizzCon next weekend, because I would hug the stuffing out of Taryn and Diva if they would allow, and say hi to Taryn's mom like Taryn himself did when his mom queued up to ask a question at his first Q&A, and he'd go, she'd ask her question, and Taryn would say, first of all, hi, Mom. And he'd have to explain, yes, that's actually my real mom. Anyhow, we're going to go raid Devil Lore, my good buddy, in person that I should actually be moderating for right now. And I'm going to go queue up for some more Headless Horsemen on my alts to see if maybe one of them will get super duper lucky and get me. The only thing I'm hunting for in the Headless Horseman event right now is the pet dog, Arthas. If you know WoW, you know the pun. And we're going to call it a day. So let me pop this out of here. I'm not going to log out because I actually need the game still up. I will, however, turn the sound off to do the outro. Options. It's under options, audio. Alright, we'll silence the game for just a minute. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for listening to me read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I really enjoy performing it. So I think this year might have been my best performance so far. Question mark? I don't know. We'll have to compare. But I'm going to upload the video to my YouTube channel. It's going to be all one thing because I don't really have a good way to segue and like make them segments without not having an intro on one and not having an outro on the other. So, Anyhow, let's get the hell out of here. Let me go raid Devilor, and I will talk to you. I will be on DDO stream on Thursday from 1 to 4. I'll be on Lotro stream on Friday from 1 to 4 because Corey will be out. So I'll be doing... No, I'm lying. Lotro stream, I'll be on from 2 to 4 because Corey will be out and we're doing Extra Life. What the hell? I talked about it and I completely forgot. And then on Saturday, I probably won't do a stream. If I do a stream next Saturday, it'll be like late, like now, because we have a moot next Saturday, and I need to. But Friday we're doing Extra Life, so I won't have time. I might just do it. Sometime I'll try to get a stream in on this channel. Sometime. I'm not sure when. Anyhow, be good. If you can't be good at it. And let's go raid Devilor, okay? Bye now.